And we're live. We are live on Facebook. And I think I would like to start with the fact that lockdown hair is a real thing.
Yeah, that's in full effect, Alan.
It is in full effect.
You should trademark that, dude.
Lockdown hair. My wife is nervous about doing it for me. I've been telling her she needs to get the clippers out and have a go, but she's nervous. And to be honest, I'm nervous because I've never seen what's under there. Have you had a lockdown haircut, Brad?
I have. Yeah, we bought some clippers from Amazon.com, and yeah, Laura gave it a go about 4 weeks ago. I think I'm due for round 2 now. It's getting kind of long, so yeah. So far so good.
So welcome to the show, everyone. I am with my business partner Simon, as always, on the PopUp live stream, and I've been looking forward to this one because we have Brad Barratt, who is one of the founders of ChooseFI, which is Choose Financial Independence. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. This is great, Simon. It's a pleasure to meet you. I can't believe it's taken this long. I've heard so much about you, and Alan.
Yeah,
always good to see you.
None of it's true. Whatever he said, none of it's true.
All of it's true. Every bit.
I believe.
Oh no.
But I think so, Brad. We were very excited to have you on the show because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you really see yourself as an entrepreneur, but yeah, kind of built an incredible business.
Yeah, it's been. I think that's a good way of looking at it. It's maybe when I take a step back, and in totality, I could say I'm an entrepreneur, and I think probably by any definition I am, but I don't have that as like my story, I guess. But it has been a story. It's been a journey. I think that's one of the wild things about my life the last 10 plus years is it's been a lot of like entrepreneurial, like little kind of like dipping my toes in. And similar to what you guys teach, it's never been a burn the boats, write the 50-page business plan and take out debt and all this other nonsense. It's like, how do you pick up skills, right? Like, how do you try to succeed? Obviously, like I'd be a fool and a liar if I said like, oh, I wanted to fail, right? Like, things that was always in the plan. It was just picking up skills, and then maybe someday it would have turned out. But that would be an obvious lie. Like I started out, I don't know about you guys, but I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek about right?
That changed our world.
Totally. Nice. I met Alan in Starbucks in Winchester. And so I think that was our first meeting. I had a few things that we chatted about. That was the time that Alan complained about my boss and sent me to go and deal with the complaint. That's another story. But one of the first conversations we had was, Alan, you've got to read this book. Yeah. It's a game changer. And I think that the inspiration from that book was the catalyst for lots of our conversations that later became the Pop-Up Business School. So it's fascinating that you say that book. It's also fascinating that you say you don't identify as an entrepreneur, because I don't either. I think Alan does. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you were the guy that you were selling stuff to your friends at school and teachers before the teachers shut you down. You're an entrepreneur.
I guess I would be. Like, I don't particularly like the word or calling myself it, but I'm probably your definition of an entrepreneur out there making things happen. I think, Brad, I'm really interested, like setting the scene for the pop-up audience that's listening. You now have a podcast that gets between 1 to 2 million downloads a month.
Yep.
Like, that's unbelievable. You've changed countless people's lives and helped them take charge of their finances. And sometimes when you see someone that's successful, you think, well, that's great for them. Like, what was your that book, what was the book inspired your first effort, or was your first effort before that? Where did it start?
Yeah. I mean, thinking back, so the book was definitely the start. And when I read that, so for anybody who's read that out in the audience, you know that Tim Ferriss talks about drop shipping, right? Like about basically selling real tangible products, but nothing that you necessarily have ever, right? Like it could be anything. You don't own it. You didn't need to produce it or have anything to do with it. You are essentially getting the sales on your site, and then, you know, you're obviously shipping this to them, but you're not involved. You're basically getting the manufacturer or whoever it may be, let's say manufacturer is the easiest way to look at it, to ship it for you. That's why they like, that's hence the drop shipping aspect. So you're basically making the difference, right? So the difference between what you earn and what you actually cost for all the, you know, actually purchasing it wholesale plus the shipping, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, I realized that a buddy of mine from back home, I live in the suburbs of New York City, a buddy of mine did that with ink. So cartridges for your printer. So he had a really successful site. I never talked to him about it. Like, I can't believe how stupid I was. And then I said, okay, like I have, not only am I learning about this from Ferris, but I have an expert who's a really good friend of mine. I actually convinced him to go in with me on another business. And we didn't know what it was going to be at that point. I kid you guys not, this is, so if you look about today, right? So we're getting, yeah, like you said, about 1.2 million downloads a month on ChooseFI, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. But again, I don't conceptualize myself as that. I think of myself 10 years ago, we bought a website called firewood-rack.net. I kid you not, for $512 on a website called flippa.com. I don't even know. Firewood-rack.net. Like the worst URL in the world, selling firewood storage racks. Guys, I have never lit a fire in a fireplace ever in my entire life. And I'm selling $400 firewood storage racks to people all across the United States. And like, it was wild. And then, so we wound up, and you know, we talk about lessons, and I'd love for you guys to jump in a minute here, but let me kind of just finish this one part of the story. Is at that point, there was a lot of like SEO, like search engine optimization gaming, right? So people were doing what they called kind of like gray hat or black hat SEO to basically just say, Google, I understand how you do this. I'm going to try to game the system and get to the top. And we fell into that. And, you know, to Google's great credit, we got decimated. And, you know, while we were number 1 or number 2 in the search engine results after we had done this gaming, we got just destroyed by Google in one of their algorithm updates, and we were nothing, and we never got a sale again. And, you know, it taught me a lot of lessons. I mean, Alan, like, you know, it's hard to imagine myself as being that inauthentic now, you know, like I like to kind of pride myself on the fact that like, I'm real, I'm authentic. I own up to all my shortcomings, which they are, you know, there's a myriad of them.
We've all done it.
But right. Like it's so interesting to think that was my first kind of, I saw that glimmer of success and then it just crushed by Google, to their great credit, you know?
Wow. What a place to start.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you that story, right?
I knew about the firewood racks, but I didn't know about the being crushed for Google, for being a grey hat, black hat. Were you having white keywords on a white background or something like that?
Oh, it wasn't quite that bad. So it was, though I wouldn't have put it past us. That was.
I did that.
Did you, Simon?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Had zero effect, but yeah, I did that. I'm curious.
Some expert told you. Right?
I was going to make some gag about you must have burnt a lot of cash with that firewood business, but let's not go there quite that early. Hey, look, the thing that is interesting to me is what was the pivot after that? Because it took me probably a good couple of years to bounce back from my first failure. Like, how quickly did you bounce back, and what was the next version of the entrepreneurial experiment?
Yeah. I mean, you would have hoped that I had learned my lesson at that point with doing things that weren't authentic. But I guess there were a couple things that ran concurrently. So the one thing, so you guys call it football, obviously we call it soccer. So I had a soccer website. I'm a lifelong soccer player called soccertools.com. And I just realized that, it's funny. I look back at all these things and there are lessons from each, right? So like I was telling Alan this on a previous Facebook Live, like I was seriously coding the English Premier League tables going back to like 92 in HTML, because I'm like, at that point, especially in the US, like the EPL was not as prevalent. Like here now you can watch every single game or match, whatever we want to call it. And, it just wasn't as prevalent. So, oh man, I'm at the vanguard of something. And no joke, my wife can remember me typing laboriously, like, Middlesbrough, 4 wins, 12 losses, 24, and I mean, it was absurd. And like, what I learned from that was like, passion is not enough. Like I had a passion for the sport, but I realized like, this is not what I want to be doing. So, there were a bunch of other little websites that kind of failed in there, but I like at that point, I almost gave up, guys, even though, I learned a bunch of lessons and I learned tangible skills. Like, yeah, you have to keep in mind that like in my day job, I was doing like the most mind-numbingly awful work. Like I was a tax accountant doing corporate state tax returns. It's like the worst job you could imagine. And you would think like I would have been, I had this soccer website that was doing better. It was a passion of mine, but like there was just something missing. And, again, I kind of just put it all down and took about a year and change off at that point, Simon.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go through that period of it's not worked. What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I had that period of lostness for some time, whereas like I've got a job, but I don't know what I'm doing and nothing's working. And then eventually you just seem to find something that clicks.
Yeah.
And I think my learning from that period was I should have tried more, harder and faster. Because if I'd have tried more things quicker, I would have found the one that worked faster. And I think the difference between Alan now and Alan then is Alan then would have a year's recovery or 6 months recovery or whatever it is. Alan now, Simon will tell you, is like, it's 2 hours. Like, I've had enough of this. Let's do something different. And I'll do something else. And it's that speed with which you do something, I think.
Do you think that is that true for you, Brad? Because I was just thinking about what Alan said. I don't know if anything has clicked as such. It's just clicking a hell of a lot more than it did, and it's sort of a gradual increase of, hey, this is really working a little bit more than the last thing. I think the deeper we've dived into PopUp and all of the things that we're working on around the edges of PopUp, the deeper we dive and the more we lean into it, the better results that we get. But I think, for both Alan and I, we've probably got 30 to 40 business projects, at least between us, that have been the next iteration. It was slightly better than the last one, but it's still not quite right. It's slightly better than the last. It's still not quite right for a whole heap of reasons. Is that your experience, or did the ChooseFI thing suddenly go, or maybe something before that?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of before that was when I first tasted like a little touch of success. And, I think it all kind of ties back to this financial independence. I realized that, and this was, I think, 2013. So it's still a decent bit of time ago, certainly. And, it's funny to look at your life and think, and this sounds a little grandiose, obviously, but like that you've kind of figured out like a little almost like secret to life. And that's how we kind of like looked at what we were doing, even though we lived the most ordinary middle-class American suburban life. Like there's nothing all that interesting about us or special or anything, but yet we were saving all this money, right? And we're living the same life as the people next door or the people down the street who were spending every dollar they had. So, we kind of realized at that point, like maybe there's something here. Like there are plenty of families like ours, family with 2 young daughters who they want to save money. They want to live better. They don't even know it yet. Right. And maybe showing that we can do it. Right. so maybe you can too. And it's amazing how sometimes, like, when people don't even have that language for like what something could be, or they've never seen an example. And I mean, this is right, like, Alan, I see you shaking your head. Like, it's amazing how you see this. And we see this with our podcast all the time. Like, there will be episodes that we'll record and we'll say, like, in our own heads, and we don't do this very often, like, but like, oh, that wasn't, I don't know that that was like a top 50 episode, that we've recorded, like, trying to say, like, okay, that's a pretty average episode. But almost invariably we'll get 10 emails from 10 different people saying, like, that person's story spoke to me. And it made such a difference knowing that they did it. So even though it didn't relate to me, it didn't connect with me, stories make the world go round. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But like, this is something that we've realized at ChooseFI is people want to connect. They want to know you. They want to understand, and to also know that, like, for me, like, I'm not a worldwide expert at finance. Like, I don't have a PhD from Oxford or Harvard, right? Like, I'm just a regular guy. Like, I'm reasonably intelligent, I suppose. And, I have a CPA. Like, you could make a story, or you could just say, like, I'm a regular suburban dad and we figured out a way to live our lives. And I think this can add some value to your life. I think, that relatability, and also, like, trying to explain both your positives, but things that you're falling down on, right? Because everybody's falling down in their lives on something, like something is going wrong, and they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for connection, and they're looking for maybe to live a little bit better. And I think, like, that was what led me to my first website, which is named after the little city that I live in here in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. So it's richmondsavers.com. And, I'm kind of going on and on here, guys, so I will let you in. But, that was how that site got on the map, because same deal. Like, we wanted to go to Walt Disney World with our family, with our two young daughters, but it cost about $5,000. And I found out a way to use credit card rewards points to go there for nearly free. Now, it doesn't work quite as well in the UK, unfortunately, but here in the States, it's like a free for all. They just, hand out these points basically. And, I realized there are millions of other families like ours that would want to do this if they even knew it was possible. So I wrote up an article, and it appeared in the New York Times and on NBC News and CBS. It was crazy. And, like, my little Richmond Savers website, because I realized, again, it's that story. It's like, I did it, you can too. And there's a huge, huge takeaway for people from that.
I love that. I did it and you can too. And I think that's basically the foundation of PopUp is, well, I didn't do it and you can avoid the mistakes I made. And then I did do it and you can too. We have a lot of that as well, the trial and error stuff. But I think that's awesome. So basically you built a website that taught people how to achieve something. How did you get that PR to get that website? Because that's what people pay millions for.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting story. I don't think I've ever, I haven't thought of this since then, and I've never mentioned this publicly, actually. So what I did was, this was really out of character. So I realized that this was something that was just of huge value. Okay. And I think at the time, there was a New York Times columnist. Hold on, I'm going to Google this. Well, just give me 1 second. I know this doesn't make for great audio here, but there was a New York Times columnist named Seth Kugel. I think he went by the Frugal Traveler, I believe. And he had this weekly post.
Frugal Kugel. You couldn't make it up, could you?
Yeah, really, for real. Yeah, it was the Frugal Traveler. Okay. And I reached out to him. I just sent him an email. I found his personal website and I sent him an email basically saying, like, hey, I haven't seen you, because he posted, an article in the New York Times every week. I've never seen you talk about credit card rewards points, using rewards points. And he actually, like, I figure there's a 1 in 1,000 chance this guy's going to write to me back. He wrote back within an hour, actually very politely, but strongly saying, I actually hate credit card rewards points. I hate
Oh,
how
wow.
people use them. I think there's like, I don't want to, misquote him, but my recollection paraphrasing is like, he didn't like the inequality of it and such, like, and he said basically, it's a cool thing that you did, but thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. And then, no joke, about a month later, he writes me back out of nowhere and said, so I'm writing an article for the best things to do for travel in 2014, I think it was then. I'm writing this big column for the New York Times. You and your wife are in the article with links to your website. He's like, I cannot promise you that it'll get past. It's a long article. I can't promise that my editor will keep it in, but you're in the first version. Out of nowhere, guys. It was crazy. And then I'm sitting there hitting F5, like refreshing. And of course, my website goes down the second that this thing gets published. But I mean, that was it. It was one cold email out of the blue. And
it's really interesting,
everything.
Brad. You've just reminded me of something that Christy and Bryce said to us, the Millennial Revolution last week, that they researched the journalist that was specifically interested in the stuff that they were talking about and targeted kind of them. So it sounds like you did something similar. I guess just before I ask you the next question, just to remind everybody, we would love to hear your questions. We've got Brad from ChooseFI, Brad Barratt, with its colleague Jonathan, have created a podcast that gets between 1 and 2 million downloads per month. What a phenomenal achievement that is. So if you've got any questions about how do you start a podcast, what are the things that might be on your mind about how to get started, and what are the important things to look for, please post your questions there. If you're interested in how Brad worked up some side hustles, if you're interested in how Brad managed to retire at 35, and no, he didn't win the lottery, we're going to cover some of these topics here. So please post your questions in there. We've got people from across the UK, we've got people from Namibia and from across America that are watching this live stream, which is super cool. So yeah, please post your questions, everybody. Brad, the thing that went through my mind is, I know that there's a lot of people that watch this live stream and that will watch it back tomorrow who they've got entrepreneurial ideas, they've got creativity in their bones, and they're constantly, coming up with new ideas, riffing on them, pushing them a little further forward, maybe not getting them over the line. I'm one of them. I've got a whole bunch of ideas that I've not got over the line over the years. I'm interested to know from you how important you think passion for the idea is, because we talk at PopUp, we talk a lot about making money doing something that you love doing, knowing it's really hard to get something off the ground. Make sure you're picking something that you love to do. But yet, some of your experiments, I mean, I'm guessing you had some passion for doing the experiment, but not necessarily, you don't strike me as a guy that was that passionate about firewood. And as you kind of said that, you never lit a fire in your life, but here you are setting up a fire stack business. I'm super interested in what your view is on passion relation to side hustles, and how important you think it is when you're having a go at something.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I don't think it's like an absolute prerequisite for like a nominal success, but I think for me personally, to follow through on something, it does have to be a passion. And I think I realized, like, to your point, the actual experiment of the early things, like, that was cool in and of itself. Like, I thought, especially as an accountant with a math brain, like, I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world that someone would come to my little website, would pay $399. I would literally forward one email. That was the extent of my job. I would forward the email to my contact at the manufacturer. They would do everything else, including hitting my credit card with the charge, and we would net a 30 to 40% profit. Like, that was the coolest business model of all time. And I thought that was just incredible. But to your point, Simon, like, I had no passion about firewood or fires or anything like that. So, that was not something that I could do for the long term. I think even the soccer website, like, that wasn't it. But I think when I hit on personal finance and kind of just not just personal finance, because I think even that would get tired or get tiring. And I think, frankly, like, even the travel reward stuff, like it got boring to me after a while. And like, I eventually reached a point where, okay, this is successful. It's, making some money, certainly. So it's a success by any measure. It's helping people. I'm getting emails that, wow, you saved my family $3,000, like on this trip, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I mean, that was amazing and gratifying, but like, it's still, and maybe this speaks to some like, problem I have or something, but like, it still wasn't enough. Like, because it got boring. And I think with ChooseFI, one thing that we've realized is like, the actual nuts and bolts of money, it's not that interesting, and it's not that difficult once you get into it. But like living a better life, right? Like life optimization, as we call it, like that's something I'm truly passionate about. Like not only for myself, because again, we all are imperfect and we're, just trying to live a little bit better, every single day in tons of different ways, right? But like there's a lot of things to work on. So like, I think like not only for myself, but then trying to teach people like, okay, there are ways to improve your life. And that is something I am truly passionate about from the core of my existence.
I love that. And Brad, you've got a Facebook group well, actually you have many. There's a couple of UK ones for the ChooseFI thing as well, aren't there? There's the London one, the UK one.
Yeah. We have, if you go to choosefi.com/local, there's a list of all of our ChooseFI groups. And actually when I visited London a couple years ago, we had a meetup at, I don't know, some pub on the Thames. And I met Barney and Ken and that whole crew. And I think like 150 people showed up for that get together. So yeah, there is a thriving financial independence community in the UK. And it's just, again, like even if money is not your thing, like even if just the nuts and bolts of like talking and thinking about money is not your thing, like it's about living a better life. It's about being intentional. So, I would say to anybody, check that out.
And the main Facebook group you've got with 65,000 odd people in, which is incredible. You ask a question every Friday saying, what's the one thing you have done to improve your world this week?
Yeah.
Like, is that something you actually do in your life? Where did this concept come from? And why do you keep asking me that every week?
I do keep asking you. It's directed specifically at you, Alan. No, I mean, I think taking action is what separates successful people from just pretty much everybody else. Like there is so much content out there. There's so much content, right? Like you can learn every single thing about any topic in the world. But if you don't get off the couch and take action, nothing good is going to happen. And I think like psychologically, it can just be that one tiny little thing that you did today that will kind of snowball into taking repetitive action that will progressively get bigger, obviously, right? To make your life better. And, there's this concept of the aggregation of marginal gains. And I think it actually started in the UK, right? Hold on, give me a sec, guys.
Wasn't it the Olympic cycling team?
Yeah, it was the Tour de France team, the British team, where I guess they were terrible for forever, for decades, right? Like truly terrible. And
yeah,
then
don't mince your words, Brad.
Yeah.
They were all penny farthing bikes. The wheels were different sizes. It was a disaster.
Yeah, the 1920s bike. 10 gold medal. Yeah, British cycling coach Dave Brailsford. So, I mean, he started looking at just little things like bringing the proper pillows on road trips. Like instead of just dealing with whatever pillow that, the hotel happened to have. And like when you stack dozens or hundreds of these tiny little incremental gains, it turns into something, it explodes into something big, right? And this is what we talk about with compounding with money, where it's slow, and then all of a sudden it starts going up because you're building money on top of this other money. And again, it takes, if you look at the curve, it takes forever to get to the point where you get to that inflection point, and then it's absurd, right? It's absurd.
It's
But
exactly the same in business. Exactly the same. If you're making the sales calls every day, you're sending the emails every day, you're improving your message every day, just tiny amounts every single day. It's like nothing happens for ages. And then all of a sudden, it just grows and you just can't believe it. And yeah, you've had that, Simon, haven't you?
Yeah, completely. In fact, we've had a question from James Christensen, who says, he's talking to this exact point. He said, have you got any tips on getting through, he's called it the trough of despair, that point when you've started the business, but nothing is happening. So I think both of you are kind of talking to that. I think if I was to add a supplementary question, Brad, and I'd love Alan to get Alan's take on how you get through the dip, Alan. Brad, how long was it until, when you launched ChooseFI, how long did it take before you were able to monetize that? And what was that period of time look like? Maybe you could talk to that and that might help James.
yeah, no, it's a great question. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just kind of go back actually to, because it is tied directly to that. So, going back to this Richmond Savers website, I tried to look at the problem a little bit differently. And I think that helped me dramatically, like putting together, like you look at your skills and look at the different worlds that you live in and try to see if you can think of something like novel that might help you in some way that somebody else just isn't thinking. So in my case, and I'll make this very concrete. So in my case, I had a very little website called richmondsavers.com, and I was never going to be the points guy getting millions of visits a month. I was never going to be Mr. Money Mustache. Like I actually said, like I vividly remember saying, like, I am never going to be Mr. Money Mustache getting millions of visits a month. But what can I do differently? So how can I take a perceived limitation, right? Or a real limitation, frankly, of, okay, I only get 5,000 visitors a month, but how can I take that and still turn it into something successful? So what I did was I took my accountant's brain and my kind of understanding of lifetime value of customer and melded it with an online world. Okay. So I created like a real world online hybrid that nobody else was thinking of at the time. And I still to this day don't think anybody's really tried to copy. So again, it's looking at this limitation of having a small audience and saying, okay, and this is where the monetization comes in, guys. So the credit card affiliate links at that point, they're pretty lucrative for each conversion. Okay. And I was able to do the math and say, what I can do is I can actually offer a free coaching service where if you come to my website and you fill in a form, I will literally jump on the phone with you for 30 minutes for free. And we'll mock up an entire plan for you to take that next trip. It might be to Paris, it might be to Thailand, it might be to Disney World. And I'll send you an email with step-by-step instructions. If you want to use my links, there's no cost to you. There's no detriment to you. It would be a huge value to me, but I'll never know if you click on them or not, basically. And, I made it easy for them to use it, but, I would have never known. So totally free, adding immense value. And again, if you take even just, I had 2 calls a day at lunch at my accountant's job. I had a 12 o'clock and a 12:30. I would walk around the parking lot, rain or shine, and take my calls. And, again, I was able to look at that as an accountant and say, all right, I think there's something here. I think there's a glimmer. So, that eventually then turned into this website called travelmiles101.com, which I realized I can't scale one-on-one, right? It's limited by my time. So I put all of my knowledge into a course, which is basically a email autoresponder series, and then was able to scale that. Okay. So, but keep in mind, guys, that I have been learning and failing about websites and monetization for 7 years at this point. And, and now succeeding towards the end of this. And, I had a decent bit of information and, and also contacts, right? Like it's very hard to get credit card affiliate links on your website if you're a brand new site. but I had built up such a relationship with the program that when ChooseFI started, I was able to get us credit card affiliate links. Obviously, we were able to get Amazon associates links. And, I had enough contacts at different sites to be able to monetize in a way that we should not have been able to based on a website of our size. So, it comes back again to like networking, which to me is such a negative word here, at least in the US. Like it has like pictures of somebody like going to a conference, just hand throwing business cards at people, right? Like, and just being totally spammy, and like nobody wants to do that. So, anyway, I built this kind of massive network, and it helped us dramatically at the very first. So, all right, guys, I keep talking for 5 minutes on end. So if you want to jump in, but I can certainly keep going.
No, I think it's awesome. I love it. I love it. I want to know more. I think a couple of thoughts on the trough of despair, which I love the new name for that. We used to call it the dip, but the trough of despair. I think it varies in length depending on what you want to do. Like the quickest I've seen someone take a podcast is like 6 to 12 months to get something of a reasonable size. If you want to learn Chinese, well, that's a good year of plus of hard work to get anything usable. If you just want to launch a cleaning business, you might be able to find clients within a couple of weeks and get going very quickly. But the dip varies depending on what you're trying to do. And I think that's a really critical indicator. If you want to build a YouTube channel, you're probably in for a year plus, maybe longer. And I think you need to know how long that dip is. And the second bit, which I think really ties in what you're saying, is you went through that dip on lots of different things. And actually, every time you go through it and you do one website business and it's a long one, and then you do the next one and it's slightly shorter, and you do the next one and it's slightly shorter. And then by the stage you get to your 5th or 7th business, you know a thing or two, and the dip might be a couple of months. But it's a long time when you start. And how do you keep going? The best way is to know it's coming and know what you're getting in for. And if you do that, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. Simon, you probably had a million. You got to unmute yourself. I know you're old now. You need to learn how to use tech.
No, I've got some instructions here that my kids left me. The bottom, they said press the button in the left-hand corner. You can't talk to me about that mute button until you get a comb through that hair, Alan. Listen, we got a really nice question. You're not far behind me. A really nice question from Oliver After Dark. It's not his actual name, but I wish it was. It's an awesome name. So his question is specifically for Brad, but I know that Alan will have a view on this as well. He said that, Brad, you've mentioned that you're risk averse. How do you rationalize that in a competitive world? When you're trying to start something that you're passionate about, but this feeling of risk feels a little bit uncomfortable. Just talk to that for a moment as to how you get through that. And Alan, I'd love your view too.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And yeah, I mean, I certainly talk on the podcast quite a bit that I am risk averse in my life. But like, I don't conceptualize that as being scared though. Like, I think there's a big distinction. So I try to cap my downside. And, and that means even just, in regular life, like if I need insurance, I'm going to be the one that gets more insurance than I need. I'm going to be the one that, with my finances, that has more cash than I probably need, because I know myself well enough to know that I won't sleep well at night if I don't have these things, right? If I could have taken simple measures to safeguard me and my family, and I didn't take them, I would kick myself, because that's just how I think. I just try to cap my downside. So I honestly, I can genuinely say I've never thought about my business ventures as risky. I don't think I've ever even had that thought. And that is from someone who is ultra risk averse. So, that tells you how I think about it. Like, and guys, I've been using I believe I have at least PopUp style tactics forever now, which is, right, like you go in, you learn skills, you don't spend a lot of money. I mean, literally that $512 that I spent was the most that I think I've ever spent on something. It doesn't cost that much to create a podcast, a website, a business anymore. It really doesn't. And, you know, I mean, Alan, to your point about like, you have to have a sense of what it's going to take. And I think that's a brilliant point, is that like, okay, if you're creating a website, a podcast, a YouTube channel, and you have no network, you have no experience with this, like nothing to shortcut anything. And that's most of us, right? That's 99% of us. So, you know, just assuming that's everybody. You're not, other than lightning in a bottle, just freak chance, you're not going to be successful in under a year or two of just hard, consistent work. That's what it takes in my experience to see success with content creation. Is you need to show up, and you need to show up once, twice, 3 times a week on a schedule, roughly, for years, until like it just kind of, it seems to happen at that point. Like, because all along the way, you've been doing these little pieces of work that are all part and parcel of success with creating content. It's having this network. It's, you know, understanding how to monetize, which you don't know on day one. Like, it's getting better at your craft, right? Like, you need to get better. Like, we were terrible at podcasting 3 years ago, like terrible. We listened back to those episodes and like, why would anybody listen to these stupid things? They're horrible. You know,
go listen to episode 1. Everyone go listen to episode 1.
I think, in fairness, I think Jonathan might have ridden over that one. Listen to episode 2. But no, guys, like you don't even know like what your voice is. Like, you know, we had an episode, one of the first 5 or so episodes is like, we thought it was going to be soapbox rant. Don't piss off the accountant. And that was me ranting about something like, you know, fees or whatnot. And like, to imagine that I would be ranting about anything now, like that really isn't who I am. And that's not certainly like who I want to be. So like, you know, we moved on from that. And so, yeah, it's been pretty wild. I was going somewhere with that, guys, but I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Alan, you can jump in.
Well, I think it's the risk bit, and you don't see what you're doing as risky. And I think people look at me, the textbook definition of an entrepreneur is someone who takes risk. And I don't see myself as a risk taker, and I don't risk money, but I will risk my ego. I don't really care about that. Like, people reject me, I do care. It hurts, but I get over it quite quickly and it doesn't cost me anything. And I think it's this thing of being an entrepreneur does not have to be risky financially, but the rest of the world thinks it is. So I would say to Oliver, like, you're going to have to risk ego, effort, and time, but you do not have to risk money. And I have not seen any of my business ventures, any of them, as particularly risky, because I've never really put my money or my net worth on the line. Put my ego on the line lots, and I've had it trounced a few times. But then that's not really that risky. Like, what's the worst that happens? I feel sad for a week. Oh well, the upside is way better.
I think that's where I've put my focus in recent years. It's my thought process is, what if this goes right, rather than what if this goes wrong? I love the thrill of the pitch, and you know, we're making some bold efforts in pop-up land at the moment. You know, part of our response to COVID and kind of reinventing the business, as well as, but it was always like this. You know, it's always a continuation of the next thing. We're just reaching for bigger and bolder targets, like we always did, and that's really exciting for me. I think if I was in my 30s, I might be more hesitant, you know, thinking that's much more risky, but that's because I was doing it the old way, and I was planning and, you know, spending money and stuff like that. I wish I'd only spent $512 on a startup, Alan. I think that's a really good number to have up your sleeve. Look, bearing in mind, we've got both of you here, we probably ought to talk about some podcasts specifically. I think I've got a question about podcasts in terms of how you start. And I know both of you have got a view on that for obvious reasons. but I think there's a couple of people that are really interested to know, how do you get started with a podcast? You know, what are the must-haves? You go, you got to have this, you got to have that, and I guess you got to know where to post it too. You know, what tips would you give to people that are watching this going, I think I want to have a go at a podcast, but where do I begin? What kind of stuff needs to be in the mind?
Alan, you want to start, or you want me to go?
No, I think like I'm not even in your league, Brad.
Oh.
I would definitely bow down to this
No.
one.
Don't be silly. Well, this is where I wish I had Jonathan, my co-host, who's the technical guy. But no, I mean, I think that actually raises an interesting point about business partners too, right? Is having complementary skills. So I am not the tech expert by any means. Jonathan loves that. I mean, he lives for it, and he has turned himself into a world-class podcast editor, and even a web designer. Like it's amazing the skills that he's picked up. But so, I mean, from my perspective, I think ultimately what the question is like, is it expensive to start a podcast? And I think the very simple answer is it just isn't. I mean, you see right now, if you can see my setup. So I have this microphone here. This microphone costs $70. It's ATR 2100. It's not quite as good as Jonathan's ultra professional one that he has, but it's probably a 9 out of 10 on audio. I have a $250 laptop that is a piece of junk, but this is my podcast studio. I have a lamp that is a $10 lamp from my kids' playroom that if you saw it right now, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think so many people get caught up with, oh, I can't produce something unless it's absolutely perfect. And it has I have to research this for months and months, if not years, take a $2,000 podcasting course, and maybe then I can start. You're not even going to know if you like podcasting or like producing content or whatever it may be. Even think about, I'll quote Tim Ferriss again. He got fed up with writing books after his 4-Hour Chef, and he decided to just make it a quick project. He said, I forget the exact number of episodes, but I'll commit to creating 6 or 10 episodes. And what's the worst that happens? Just my mom listens to it. That was the downside. And again, it comes back to risk, right? Is what was the risk for me and Jonathan creating this? A couple $100 in equipment, a couple hours of time. And to the actual question, I think you need to store these episodes somewhere. So we use a website called service called Libsyn, Libsyn. But that is it. I think it costs $20 a month for storage. And no joke, that is the entirety. And we did that for probably the first 6 to 8 months of just nothing else. There was no need to spend any money. It just, and then obviously we could talk if maybe round 2, guys, we could do some time about how we grew the podcast. I suspect we're going to run out of time here, unfortunately, but I wouldn't mind if you guys are up for it. Me and Jonathan could come back on and we could chat about that. I think that would be super valuable.
That's a hell yes.
Amazing.
Nice.
Amazing. We'd love that. And Edmund T, who I believe has suggested that ChooseFI create a podcast course, which I'm sure a whole bunch of people would be fascinated in. And you've certainly got the credits to your name to have the credibility in that space, right? Love it.
Nice. Good old Ed is our CEO at ChooseFI. He's just an incredible human being. And Jonathan has wanted to create a podcasting course for years. I've tried to talk him out of it, but I think he'd produce probably the single best one in the world. So I think maybe I might get overruled here.
Yeah, I think you might. Well, it's Edmund's written it down. It's now in type in this thread.
Nice.
It's probably going to become a reality. These CEOs can be ever so annoying about this sort of stuff. I love it. Brilliant. Alan, how did you meet Brad and Jonathan? And, just how did the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast come about? Because just in case people watching haven't seen it plastered all over every single social media that we can find, the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast in partnership with ChooseFI, which is the podcast that Alan's been running, and there's lots of Pop-Up Business School guests and some fantastic people on there from the FI world as well. Launched yesterday on May the 4th. That's why we thought it was a good idea to put Alan holding a lightsaber as part of Star Wars Day. Alan, how did this stuff come about? And by the way, before I let you answer, I think like this is a great clue in the sense of if you want to shrink the amount of time that it takes to get from complete beginner through to something successful, if you can find a trusting, authentic relationship with someone that's already done it, it doesn't half speed things up, Alan, doesn't it? I don't know how we said the other day how long it would have taken us to create a podcast from scratch without the knowledge and support and the infrastructure that these guys have been able to create from nothing, which is phenomenal. But how did it all come about?
Well, I tried, Simon. I actually,
I forgot that. Have we still got the episode?
Yes, let's not go there. I can't remember. Brad, was it you or Jonathan that emailed? Like, I met you, but I didn't really know you through the Chautauqua in Ecuador. But we never kind of like, it was a Miles thing.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? How it all leads back to like being authentic and adding value. So like you were a part of Chautauqua with Jim Collins, and I had reached out to Jim years ago and basically said, this is way before ChooseFI, like I want to help the financial independence community. And I offered, at that point, I couldn't afford to go to Chautauqua or whatever you could come up with, whatever, but that I wasn't going to go to Chautauqua, but I wanted to help. So I offered to help people with that free coaching service to help people get to Ecuador or wherever it was for free using rewards points. So, I think that's how we initially got connected, right? Like you saw that I was that person, you reached out to me, and that's how we were vaguely acquainted. But then years later, when ChooseFI came out and we came out with our episode, The Pillars of Financial Independence, which is episode 21 of our podcast. And we, at that point, this sounds crazy, Alan, thinking about it now, that we left off entrepreneurship entirely. And because it's become such a part of the FI community because of you, truly, that like, we just take it for granted now in May of 2020 that it is a pillar of the financial independence community, but it wasn't in 2017, at least in my eyes. It wasn't enough to even make a top 10 until you reached out to us and emailed us and this was like, hey guys, I think you left something out that's really, really important. And we very quickly had you on the podcast just a few short episodes later.
Yeah, because I was like, you've got lots of stuff about saving money. Where's it about making more? Because surely that should be one of the things. And I came on, did the episode with you, loved it. And then actually by trying to do my own podcast, I realized quite quickly it was a lot of work and I didn't really enjoy it. And I much preferred being on other people's podcasts. So I spent the next probably 3 years being on your podcast repeatedly until people were annoyed with me.
Never.
And then, you were kind of expanding and thinking about other podcasts to launch, and we had a chat and I was like, I'd love to do that. Yeah. But by partnering, Jonathan was just able to say, here, watch this YouTube video, use this microphone, done. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. And I was recording 10 minutes later. Right. That would have taken me so long to figure out on my own if I hadn't have had your support on that.
That learning curve, it's amazing how when you can shortcut it, it's remarkable. But yeah, Simon, I'd love to get your input on this. I'm sure you've had many of these type of emails from Alan, but Alan was just somebody who is obvious that we wanted to partner with. I mean, he is a force of nature. He's incredible. Like we would get, I can vividly remember just a handful of emails like, hey, Alan, we'd love to have you back on. Let's brainstorm some ideas and whatnot. And I would get a 15 bullet point email that probably would have taken me 20 hours to write. And it took Alan probably 30 minutes of just brainstorming frantically. And but each one was fully fleshed out and could have been an episode in its own right. And it's just like, this is a guy you want to partner with. I mean, this is someone who not only has the knowledge, but I mean, he takes action. And again, that I know that's been a theme of this hour, but taking action separates successful people from unsuccessful ones. And, when we were thinking about expanding the ChooseFI network, Alan was a very, very obvious person. I'm Alan, truly, we haven't even talked about this, but I'm so glad you're on board on the team. Like, I'm part of their, you and Simon and PopUp. Like, this is amazing. Like, you guys are, what you're doing in the world is truly remarkable. And yeah, I mean, if we can help expand that reach, I mean, that's a successful life, right? Like, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying, all of us, we're trying to help people live better lives. And yeah, what you guys have put together is nothing short of amazing. So thank you, truly, both of you guys.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad. Feelings mutual for sure. It's just phenomenal what you've created.
I'd like to pick up on one thing Brad said, which is the difference between success and not is taking action. If any of our audience have ever caught themselves saying, I know that probably means you haven't done it. And like, so many people say to me, yeah, I know that, Alan. They're like, I know you can do this. I know you can do that, but they've never done it. And I just think, next time you catch yourself listening to a podcast, reading a book, listening to a live stream like this, and you say, yeah, I know that, that's probably the thing you need to do, because there's a big difference between knowing and doing.
Yeah, I know that, Alan. I was just thinking, actually.
Oh, that was too easy, son.
That was too easy.
Look, you tee them up and I'll slam dunk them. The thing that went through my mind with what Brad was saying about your email, Alan, I get about 15 of those every Saturday morning. So, Brad, I feel your pain on that one. But there is something here, and I think there's something about putting stuff out there and keeping your foot on the gas until you've either made it a reality or decided that either it won't work or you don't want to do it, or I'm not going to do it now, and so on. And I think that's what we've got a lot in common here. There's been a couple of lovely comments. So Kenitha from Charleston has said,
she makes frozen custard, and she makes incredible. She's launching a frozen custard business. Where are you in my life? Why are you in America?
Yes, we need to get Kenitha here. She says, thank you, Brad, for telling us about Pop-Up Business School on your podcast. I had the great fortune of attending the last live pop-up that happened in Charleston, and it's been an amazing game changer. You and Jonathan add so much value. And there was another message. I'm just scrolling down to see if I can find one here. From Paul Hamilton, listening to Alan on ChooseFI was what helped persuade my wife to come to a Chautauqua event with me and ultimately get fully on board with the whole FI thing. So there's this sort of theme of just making those adjustments and taking steps. And every single one of us, the people that are watching this live stream or watching, after we've, put it up on the website, every single one of us want something to be slightly better than it is right now. And that's why we're investing our time and our energy to learn new things. So this is all good stuff. I think I can't believe that it's now 10 o'clock. Like, I could keep this conversation going for ages.
I feel like we've just started.
I know, yeah, we're just getting warmed up, so we must get you back.
Hour ever. Yeah, I'm happy to come back, guys, anytime. Seriously.
Awesome. We would love to have you and Jonathan. You guys make an incredible dynamic duo, and I think it's interesting because you get a chance to talk about a whole different bunch of stuff on this show because it's about entrepreneurship that you just don't get to talk about normally.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I have to say some of these stories, like that one with the New York Times writer, like I, no joke, had not thought of that in 6+ years. And I mean, that's just like a cool little anecdote that, I wish I hadn't forgotten. I don't know where it came from. So yeah, guys, this was a lot of fun. I mean, I like I said, this has been a long journey for me. And I think, what I would kind of leave the audience with is like, everybody always thinks like, oh, some like elusive like they were preordained to be successful or they had these advantages or whatever it is. And like, obviously there's some truth to that in the world, but like in my experience, it's not that. It's just getting up off the couch and taking action. I mean, I've said it so many times, like I was not preordained for success in any way. Like this past decade has been littered with these little failures, but they were little failures. They didn't ruin me. I didn't go through bankruptcy. I never risked the farm or the house on anything, right? Like it was just, you learn skills and you move forward. And, you know, to your guys' point, like the time between them gets shorter. And then you also then have this entire snowball of skills that you've built up that eventually, like for me, when ChooseFI came along, I had all this knowledge. So it was easy to apply it, right? So when the opportunity came along, I was prepared because I had taken action. I laid the groundwork for nearly a decade. So, you know, please don't get held up on, oh, that successful person, like they must have some elusive thing that I don't have, like, you know, whoever you are. That's not it. It's just that they just kept trying in most cases. They just kept trying and they got up off the couch and they took action.
Yeah, you can't keep them down. They just keep going. Brad, like I really want people at home to listen to your podcast, but there's a lot of episodes. Where should people start? If you're new to the FI world, where's the best place to start?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you very much. I'd say first, everybody, if you do listen to podcasts, you should certainly subscribe to Rebel Entrepreneur. That's a no-brainer. But if you do want to
get a room, you too.
if you do want to subscribe to ChooseFI, I would start with episode 100. I think that will give you, that's kind of like our welcome to the FI community overview. I think it'll give you a pretty good sense of what we're about, what the entire financial independence mindset is about. And you can pretty much use that as a launching point. So a lot of people just start then back at episode 1. Like you said, Alan, there's probably 300 plus episodes at this point. So that is a multi-month journey. But if you start with episode 100, you're going to have a sense if you're going to enjoy it. So definitely start there. And also, if you don't mind, we do have a page at choosefi.com/start. So if you head there, you can put in your email address. We have a ton of resources there. So, I would highly, highly recommend like that as a good jumping off place. And like we talked about, there are local groups all across the world. So there's lots of ways to get into the community, but start with episode 100 for sure.
I love that. I absolutely love that because the people listening to our show are on an entrepreneurial journey. And I've been on that for about, many, many years. But there is a second journey, which is your finance journey. And they actually tie in quite nicely because if you can build a business and be smart with your money, the life you can build is incredible. So I like everyone that's listening from the pop-up audience, please work on the finance journey as well as the entrepreneurship journey, because in combination, there is magic there.
Yep, agreed.
Mr.
Beautiful.
Payne, do you have anything to say to people at the end?
Alan, you are as always an Edwardian cat. So thank you for your energy and effort this evening. I don't know what that means either. No, look, I think we absolutely must get Brad and Jonathan back. Thank you everybody for watching. Please share this post and tag people that you think might be interested in the journey that we're on, which is about helping people to start businesses and restart their businesses in the most challenging time in all of our lifetimes. And all of this stuff is being posted on the Pop-Up Business School Survival Guide on our website. We've had over 20,000 views of our live streams now since the lockdown began, which is phenomenal. So Jack has been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this stuff happen. Please go to whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Download the Rebel Entrepreneur. Help us get it some momentum as it only came out yesterday. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to ChooseFI. And we'll see you on Thursday evening for some more podcast-related magic and a few secrets that Alan's going to share on Thursday. He doesn't know it yet, but I've got some big questions for him on Thursday evening, 9 p.m. UK time. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Stay safe, stay at home, and all of that stuff. And we'll catch you very soon.
Brad, you are a legend.
Thank you, Brad.
Right back at you guys. This was great.
Amazing.